Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to AFC's presentation on the early childhood education during COVID-19. Before we start, we'd like to know who's in the room. So we're going to do a couple of polls. Just give me a moment. We're also going to do another poll so that we can gauge your interest to see what you're most interested in learning about today. All right, I see we have a lot of educators, some parents, other professionals. All right, the next poll, we're going to see what you're, gauge your interest to see what you're most interested in learning from us today. All right, we'll give it a little bit more time to give those who haven't responded yet a chance. Okay, remote learning, preschool, special education. All right, devices. Okay, so we're glad to know that you're interested in learning so much. Hopefully we can answer some of your questions. We're gonna have a Q&A box going throughout this presentation. So feel free to ask any questions. I think someone raised their hand already. We will stop throughout portions of this presentation for questions, but we also have a moderator who's here with us to answer some of your questions, all right? I'm going to give you an overview of what we're going to be speaking about today. My name is Alana Miles, and I'm a staff attorney in the Early Childhood Education Project at Advocates for Children. Betty, do you want to introduce yourself, or would you like me to?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Like Alana said, we have a lot of information that we want to cover and share with you today. And now we know that we will be focusing a lot of that attention on preschool special education, for example. My name is Betty Mello. I am the Early Childhood Education Project Director at Advocates for Children. I will be talking to you mostly near the end of the presentation when we get to special education services.
Yes, yes. So During today's presentation, we're going to cover a range of topics. We're going to start with in-person childcare options. Then we're going to go to remote learning. We'll talk about DOE devices and tech support. And I know there's a lot of educators in the room, so we'll give you some resources for how you can support your students. Then we'll get into early intervention, preschool special education, kindergarten transition, and resources. Again, throughout this presentation, we'll stop so that we can answer questions, but there is a Q&A chat going on, and our moderator will flag questions or answer them throughout the presentation. Also, throughout this presentation, you'll see that I will refer to certain links. At the end of the presentation, we'll make this presentation live in PDF form so that you can go back to it later and click links that we're going to be referencing to. All right, let's get started. But before we go further, I'm going to tell you a bit about Advocates for Children. All right. AFC is an independent agency that protects the rights of all students. It was founded in 1971 by parents of students with disabilities, and our mission is to ensure a high-quality education for New York students who face barriers to academic success, focusing on students from low-income backgrounds. We accomplish our mission through a variety of services and resources. One is our helpline. It's open Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's currently, we're still working remotely, so feel free to call the helpline if you have any questions. We also provide free legal services to low-income families. If you visit our website, you can see a host of guides and resources pertaining to various topics, including some of the topics that we'll be talking about today. Then we present workshops and trainings and webinars like the one we're doing today. And we also conduct policy advocacy and impact litigation that shapes and reforms education. All right. All right, let's move on. All right, so schools are closed and you may still have to go to work. I know there's a lot of educators in the room, but for the parents that are in the room and for information to provide to other families, there are options for in-person care and instruction. Sorry, let me move this out the way. For essential workers. So if you click this link, there's an exclusive list of what constitutes as essential workers. And these options include Regional Enrichment Centers, Emergency Child Care Centers, and Care Scholarship. All of these services are free of cost and available to New York City residents. All right, let's move on. All right, Regional Enrichment Centers. So Regional Enrichment Centers are available to students in 3K to grade 12. They're open from 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Students who attend Regional Enrichment Centers should bring their devices because the expectation is that they are receiving their instruction remotely just at the Regional Enrichment Centers. All meals are provided. Classrooms are still adhering to social distancing policies. So class sizes are very small. Some class sizes are 1 student to 1 teacher. And for more information, you can click here. All right. And then another option is emergency child care centers. This option is available if you have children that are 6 months to pre-K and also their siblings. So if you have a child that's 6 months, from 6 months to pre-K, and they also have an older sibling, then you may also be interested in an emergency child care center if you would like for all of your children to be in the same location. This option is also open from 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. All meals are provided and you can apply here. Note that if you're interested in an emergency childcare option, there are you will be required to provide proof of New York City residency and proof of age for the children that you're enrolling. And then also you would have to provide medical immunization forms. Again, both programs are free of cost and they must serve students with disabilities and support remote learning. Emergency child care centers are not like education. It's not like a classroom, but the expectation is that students are still receiving some type of educational instruction. All right. And you may be interested in further childcare, but perhaps your work schedule does not align with the hours for regional enrichment centers or ECC centers. For example, you may work overnights and weekends. The Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, also known as CARES Act scholarship, may be an option for you. All right, so this scholarship provides funding for private childcare. The hours are extended so that you can provide childcare. You can get childcare on like weekends or nights. And it's important that I note that the deadline to apply is tomorrow, May 15th. So if you're interested in this option, or if you have families who may be interested, please get the note out to them now, and note this for later. All right. And you can get more information by calling this number, or you can go online here. All right. All right, and I think we have some questions coming up, so let's pause for some of those.
Thanks again, everyone, for using the Q&A to get us your questions. Some of the ones that have been coming up frequently are, will the PowerPoint be available? The answer is yes. We will send you a copy of the PowerPoint slides as a PDF, I believe tomorrow. So you will receive a copy of that. We received some questions about proof of attendance. I don't know if this is related to maybe some of you as educators, if this would be credit for professional learning. We are not offering credit right now for this presentation. If you need proof of attendance, hopefully the Eventbrite registration and proof that we sent you the PowerPoint will count, but do not have, we're not tracking attendance right now, but we can definitely look into it based on the participant history. We also have questions about how you can support, how educators can support parents' social emotional needs while families are in quarantine, and resources for parent support. I think we're going to start really getting to most of those throughout the rest of the presentation, including kind of what remote learning looks like and what kind of resources the DOE, for example, has made available to families. And then at the end of the presentation, we also have a pretty extensive list. If you feel that we haven't given you the resources you were looking for, please ask the question again later on in the presentation, and hopefully we can be a little bit more specific.
All right. All right, I think that's it. All right, let's jump back in to remote learning. All right, so programs are offering a variety of remote educational services while schools are closed. They range from 3K, pre-K, early learning, kindergarten. Programs are, they vary based on the school. Programs are using a variety of platforms such as Google, Zoom. I think at one point Zoom was not utilized, but now it's back, Dojo, and instruction in classrooms vary. We'll see like sing-alongs, story time, show and tell, but it really varies by classroom in school. Note that remote learning for early childhood education, and when I say early childhood education, I mean like 3K, pre-K, early learn, kindergarten, et cetera, is going to be different than the instruction for higher grades. So high school, for example. So you're not going to have like lesson plans, but also keep in mind that the grading policy for pre-K is different. So it's not going to change because students don't receive report cards and progress reports. So there's no, there's not going to be a grading policy. For the educators that are in the room and for the parents, you should know that your schools and your teachers should still be keeping with regular contact with families. The DOE is encouraging at least 2 communications a week per family. So that can be either via telephone or via Zoom or email. All right. I want to go back because I think there was a question that I don't want to miss before we go further on, but are staff members in early childhood education centers DOE licensed and certified? Yes. So in the ECC centers and in the rec centers, the volunteers are DOE staffed. There's an option if you would like to volunteer, and they ask you for your credentials. So yes. And we also have some that are certified and licensed to support students with disabilities. So if you have specific needs, let the DOE know when you apply or register your students so that you get the right services. All right. All right, let's go forward. Let's Learn. I don't know if any of you guys have any familiarity with this, but Let's Learn is a new program that was launched by New York City and the DOE as a public television program to supplement remote learning. All right. So every day at 11 o'clock, if you go on channel 13, which is PBS, you can get live instruction, live lessons, if you will, for students in 3K to 2nd grade. These lessons are for an hour, and you can also go online here if you want to look at it later. I know a lot of times educators, you may be providing instruction during that time, or for the families that are in the room, this can be an option for further education or learning activities in the evening or after school hours. If you click here, you can watch the playback. All of the episodes are saved there, and you can also download any materials that are required for each lesson plan. All right, let's see if we have anything. And also, sorry, to go back to, there was a question about certifications for ECC centers. The certifications are either DOE certified or the NYC Department of Health certified, depending on where you're at. Okay. Now let's go to devices. I'm not going to spend too much time here because there didn't seem to be a lot of interest, but briefly we'll go over them. So devices are still available. If you need a device or if you have a student who needs a device, make sure that they go online to apply. They can also pick up forms at the DOE's Grab and Go meal hubs. Although there are devices that are still available, it's very limited. So you should apply as soon as possible if your family needs one or if you have a student who needs one. Students that are eligible are DOE K through 12 students, 3K, pre-K, early learn students, and SKIS classes, special class in an integrated setting, special classes, and students receiving SEIT. There's different options for you to choose. Yes, so let's move forward. All right. Okay, so this is what the application looks like. If you scroll over here, there's a drop-down menu for different language options. Sorry. So the request form is going to ask for your child's ID. You can find this on the first page of your child's ID, of your child's IEP. It will have either their OSIS number or it will say New York City ID. If you don't know your child's ID, student ID, or if, for example, your child is receiving SEIT, they don't have an IEP, you should type in 9 and then your child's birthday. So if your child was born on May 14th, 2016, you will type in a 90514-2016. All right. Let's do another poll, just to gauge how many people have their devices and quotes. Not applicable. Okay. All right, well, next we're going to talk about we're going to go over some troubleshooting. So I know that there's a lot of educators in the room, but hopefully you can pass these resources along to students you may have if they're having problems. So the DOE has a technical support page where you can go to for more information. They've launched this form that families can go to if they have issues that range from checking the status or delivery of their iPad request, if they need to report a lost or stolen device, support for signing in and downloading applications. They can go to that form, type in your response, and you'll get an email back and their response. There's also a list of commonly asked questions that you can go to as well. If you click this link, getting started with your iPad, this will also give you more information for setting up your iPad. If the student has an iPad, but your classroom requires applications or requires them to download things that are not in it, there's a request that teachers should go to request the applications for the students, okay? And then Apple also has a phone number that you can go to. And like I said, families should feel welcome to contact their teacher or their program for more information. All right, let's see if we have some questions.
So it looks like we did get some questions when it came to family engagement. And I think that came up when Alana was talking about, remote learning. Part of it is really encouraging to continue communicating and engaging with parents and families for programs that are contracted by the DOE, or, if you're speaking mostly to a lot of the educators, I guess, on here. The Department of Education, for example, is encouraging at least 2 interactions with families that can take various forms. Hopefully families are actively participating or logging into any recorded sessions that you have or live sessions, and obviously engaging with their related service providers if they receive related services or see it. Especially if they're not, then engaging with the family can include a phone call, can include something done over any of your platforms, for example, Dojo, Zoom, the Google Hangouts. So just really those interactions, checking in, seeing if the family needs any type of support, seeing why, if there have been challenges to a child participating, what those are, especially early on when a lot of families didn't have access to devices or were not permitted access to devices. It was really important to gauge what is the barrier here in accessing services. And so it's in a variety of forms. Any type of outreach that you do is strongly encouraged.
Any other questions? You want to move on? All right, Betty's going to take over.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit now, or more than a little bit, on services available to young children with developmental delays and disabilities. And before I get started, I just want to kind of a quick disclaimer. We're not going to be able to go into detail about early intervention, preschool special education, or the Turning 5 process. For any of you familiar with any or all of those systems, you know that we can dedicate a 1-hour webinar to any individual topic. So if you are looking for more of that general resource and in-depth knowledge and understanding of how the process usually works or typically works, I will direct you to review our guides and materials that are on our website. The pink button there on the bottom of the slide will take you straight to our website where you can access all of these materials. But just as a very quick overview, we're going to kind of go in chronological order, but based on the services for the age of the child. So we'll talk a little bit about early intervention, which is for children from birth to age 3, preschool special education, 3 to 5-year-olds, and then briefly kind of changes to the Turning 5 process and kindergarten placement for this year. So with early intervention, and actually with all these special education services, the good thing to know is that for the most part, the rights of children have not changed. So you do have rights to these services, just the nature that the services are happening and the communication between you, the parent, and providers will look different. But EI is still accepting referrals. To make a referral for early intervention, so if you have a child or know of a child, between birth and 2 years old, you can still make a referral if you suspect that that child has a developmental delay or disability by calling 311 or the regional office. Do not fax forms right now to the regional office. Do not mail documents. Really encourage contact by phone. After the referral is made, it's a similar process. You will be able to schedule evaluations. The evaluations will take place through teletherapy. Now, again, that will look a little bit different, right? The service coordinator will contact you by phone, discuss your rights, discuss the evaluation process, and help you set up this appointment. The evaluation will look different. It is a remote evaluation. This process should be explained to you, to the parent, before the evaluation starts, including explaining that the evaluation could take multiple sessions. It should still be a multidisciplinary evaluation, meaning across different areas of development for your child. And because of that, could involve multiple calls, multiple video conferences with different providers, with different evaluators. Some of the things that you may be asked to do either during that initial call or during the evaluations themselves, again, you parent, is to do a quick tour of your home. So showing the evaluator, where your child, where their toys are, right? What type of activities they usually engage in. During the evaluation itself, it's going to require a lot of the parents. You're going to be a very involved participant. It's going to involve the evaluator asking you to help the child or ask the child to do different activities. Obviously, a lot of questions about social history and the development of the child. So it is going to be a different type of evaluation, but hopefully you have the time, the patience, the wherewithal to be able to do it, and hopefully evaluations can be completed so that your child may be able to benefit from services. So after the remote screening and evaluations, the IFSP meeting should happen. They are still taking place, but they are taking place by phone. It should still take place within 45 days of your referral. And if your child is found eligible, then your child can begin receiving services. These services will be done through teletherapy. What that means is, just like as for the evaluations, we really encourage you to have access to a device that has both audio and video. That could be a smartphone, a laptop, a tablet. There's no requirement that it be any particular device for the evaluations, and also for the remote services, a smartphone should be sufficient, as long as it has video that you can, as long as it streams a video. This is kind of the process for somebody starting new. We'll go into in a moment that these, if your child already has services in place, hopefully they have continued relatively uninterrupted. Okay, I think we may have skipped a slide. Sorry, Alana, can you go back? Thank you. Okay, so the services themselves for early intervention. Your early intervention service coordinator and your providers should have contacted you to transition from in-person or center-based services to remote services. If that did not happen, your child is not yet receiving services, please contact your service coordinator, call 311, call us, Advocates for Children. We have our helpline information at the end of this presentation. For remote evaluation, or for remote services to start, a parent does need to provide consent for teletherapy, but that consent can be provided in a variety of ways. There is a specific form for you to fill out, but if you don't have access to a printer or scanner, you can provide consent by text, by email as well. And what that email would look like would basically be a statement from you, the parent, saying that, here, I'll just like read some model language. This email serves as my written consent to utilize telehealth to receive early intervention services during the COVID-19 declared state of emergency. And you should put your full name in that email and your date and the date. Same thing for text. If the provider mails you the form, you can fill out the form, sign the form, take a photo, and send it to the provider or your service coordinator. That should also be enough for them to have consent and be able to initiate services. Again, for services, you do need a device that's capable of streaming both video and audio. A smartphone can and should be sufficient. If you do not have access to one of these devices, early intervention is not currently providing them. There's not a source of them yet, but you should contact your service coordinator if that is the barrier, and contact us at Advocates for Children. On a case-by-case basis, we have seen that they've been able to offer families some assistance. And finally, with especially early intervention services provided remotely, you, the parent, are going to have to be a very active participant. So even before starting the services, a provider will ask if you're available and try to really coordinate schedules, because it does require, if not yourself as a parent, an adult who can help assist the child in really benefiting from the sessions and engaging in different activities with the child. Okay. Again, keep any questions that you have coming through the Q&A, and we'll answer, or I'll go through and answer them in a moment. But before that, we're just going to do a quick poll on some of the topics we've covered. So actually more of a quiz this time. Okay, there it is. Going to give people just another moment. Okay, so the poll asks if parents can request an iPad from the DOE for a child to receive EI services. 52% of people responded by saying yes. 33 no, 15% I don't know. So I just want to remind you, and again, this is maybe unfair because we didn't do a complete overview. Early intervention services are managed and run by the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene in New York City, not by the Department of Education. So those services those are two different systems, two different agencies. And unfortunately for children receiving EI services, unless it's a child who's participating, for example, in a DOE early learn program or 3K program, that child is not able to request devices from the DOE. Again, if the device is the barrier for you to secure or receive services, I encourage you to reach out to your service coordinator, to Consumer Affairs. I'm going to have actually, I think in the next slide, some of this contact information, but do reach out to early intervention, also to us at Advocates for Children, and we will try to assist you in securing a device. And so speaking of which, for questions and support, your EI service coordinator should be the first person that you reach out to. Hopefully that communication has not stopped during this period. New York City Regional EI offices as well, and EI Consumer Affairs, they have an email inbox that is pretty responsive to requests. The contact information for those three are included in our early intervention guide. If you click on that box with the question mark, it'll direct you to our guide, or you can find the telephone numbers and emails. Finally, we recommend that you regularly check in with the New York City EI website. They do update information there. The cover page has COVID-specific information. I think if many of you have questions about the EI to CPSE transition, which we're about to cover, I expect that they will make sure to put updates there as soon as they develop. Although devices are not being provided across the board for families, EI is sharing information with families to help them access internet minutes, so data and minutes, particularly for their smartphones. So I've just linked a few of the services that they're recommending. Click on any of those to get more information about who's eligible and how to apply. Okay. So typically, services for early intervention and when a child turns 3. So potentially the day before their 3rd birthday. That said, families may have the opportunity to extend early intervention services if they take the following steps. The first being to refer the child for preschool special education services, to have the child evaluated, have an IEP meeting to determine eligibility, and be found eligible. That is a lot to do before a child's birthday, but if it all happens, if a child is eligible for preschool special education services, then the family has the opportunity to extend services. Now, typically, families will refer their child for preschool special education services, or at least we recommend that they refer the child, 3 to 6 months before their birthday or before the child is eligible for preschool special education services. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, for several weeks, or actually a couple of months, this second key step, the evaluations, were not taking place. Children were not being evaluated for preschool special education services in person or remotely. And so that obviously created a huge concern about how or if families would be able to extend EI services in order to make sure that their child does not experience a gap. Ooh, okay. Sorry, I just changed something on my screen. Luckily, there was quickly some guidance issued so that the referral, evaluation, IEP meeting, and eligibility determination does not need to take place by the child's 3rd birthday under COVID. So if we could go to the next slide. Okay. Because of the delays with evaluations, currently, as long as a parent made a referral for preschool special education, a child is eligible to extend early intervention services either until June 30th or until evaluations take place and an IEP meeting is held for that child, whichever comes first, right? So what that means is if the parent made the referral and had evaluation scheduled and that evaluation was canceled because evaluations weren't taking place, potentially that child can extend right now through June 30th, and hopefully that gives the family time to secure those evaluations. If they do, great, let's have the IEP meeting. If at the IEP meeting the child is found eligible for services, then that child can extend either through August or the end of December based on their birthday. If the child is not found eligible, the child cannot extend early intervention services beyond their 3rd birthday. June 30th is right around the corner, so I can definitely understand the concern that may not give families much time. So we are encouraging families to, especially if they had already made a referral and already scheduled evaluations, to really follow up and not just rely on this temporary extension. Okay. Which gets us to preschool special education. And again, if you have any questions about that transition or those dates, please put the questions in the Q&A, and I will be sure to answer them in just a few moments. So for preschool special education, again, just like early intervention, your child's rights have not changed. It's just the nature of how services are being provided that has. The CPSCs, or Committee for Preschool Special Education, they are still receiving referrals and responding to referrals, but some of the contact information is new. So in order to get preschool special education services, the first step is for the parent to refer the child to CPSC. We recommend at this time that the referral be by fax or by email and not by mail. There is no one staffing the CPSC offices. There is new contact information now on the DOE website. Before, for example, the CSE chairperson wasn't listed. The community coordinator contacts weren't listed, but now all that information is online. You can access it by clicking that question mark on the slide. After the referral is made, the DOE should send the parent a referral packet, which includes a list of evaluation agencies. It's still the parent's responsibility to schedule evaluations. These evaluations will be remote evaluations, so will require additional consent. There's always been a requirement to, or parents have always had to sign consent before beginning evaluations. Now there's also a consent for remote evaluations. Another, what's a little bit new, because it's remote evaluations, parents are more encouraged, I think, than they were before to share EI records with the CPSE. So particularly for children who are transitioning, we recommend that you give consent to your EI service coordinator, give consent to early intervention to share EI evaluations and progress reports with the DOE so that they can rely on those evaluations or supplement those evaluations with the newer remote evaluations. Once evaluations are done, the DOE is still required to hold an IEP meeting. It should still be held within 60 calendar days of when the parent signed the consent form. Meetings are taking place by phone, or many are also taking place on Microsoft Teams, which allows you to both call in or appear by video. After the IEP meeting, although schools are closed, students can begin to receive services remotely. And I'll talk a little bit more in depth about what the services look like, particularly for children who already had an existing IEP. Also, once your child has a preschool IEP, again, preschool special education services, this is all run by the Department of Education. So now you do have access to request a DOE device, even if your child is not enrolled in a 3K pre-K program or in a preschool special class or SCID study. Now, speaking of, if your child's IEP does recommend a special class in an integrated setting or a special class, although schools are closed now, the DOE should still work on identifying that class for you for when schools open, but should also be providing you with a partial service plan or other services while you wait for your child to begin school. So you should not be required to go several months without any services simply because schools are closed and your child can't be immediately placed. Okay. So just a little bit more of a recap on the evaluations that we discussed. Again, no in-person evaluations are taking place right now, but remote evaluations have started. So although they didn't happen for a few weeks, they have started, I believe they started at the end of April. The evaluations are through audio and video. Again, if you do not have a device that's capable of connecting that way, do reach out to AFC, do reach out to the CPSE administrator, the CPSE community coordinator. Those contacts are listed on the DOE website that I linked to previously. Remote evaluations includes bilingual evaluations. And in fact, we learned today that the DOE has given access to its phone interpretation service to evaluation agencies to at least facilitate that communication with families. Again, though, for bilingual evaluations, the best practice would be for them to be done by bilingual evaluator and not relying on this phone interpretation service. In addition to consenting to the remote evaluations, again, for families who have children in EI, we recommend that you also consent to sharing EI records if you're comfortable with that so that it can supplement the remote evaluations that will be done by the DOE or the evaluation agency that you choose. And if you have any questions about that, the referral process, contact the CPSE. Okay. So once services are recommended, this is actually particularly for children who already had services in place. Related services are still being delivered. They're being delivered remotely. This includes OT, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, and counseling, yes. To the extent that it's feasible, providers should be, it should be the same provider your child had who is working with your child now remotely. And to get these services set up, it was really the responsibility of the provider to contact the family to work out a schedule with the family for services, but also to determine if the family had a device, so an iPad, smartphone, tablet that the family can use. For these group of kids, families can request an iPad from the DOE. If, however, the family, if you're still waiting for an iPad, I think in the poll it said if you still were, or waiting for any type of other device, some of these sessions can be provided by phone, particularly counseling, or if your provider agrees that that the child could benefit from services and make progress on the IEP goals, even if through phone only, could initiate services by phone, particularly if you're still waiting, if you're just waiting for a device. To initiate services, the provider should receive consent from the parent that you are interested in receiving services remotely. That consent can be done verbally. So it's sufficient for you to say by phone that you are in agreement, and the provider will just document that. You do not have to sign something or send an email for related services to start. If you opt out of services, if you don't think your child would benefit from remote services, or in discussing the case with the provider, they discuss with you why it may be difficult for your child to make progress with services, there is still a requirement that the provider continue to contact you to check in. The check-ins are the form of consultation, so it could be, a once-a-week conversation with you about how the child is doing and maybe recommending strategies for you to do with it. If your child's related services were being provided, we can go back. If your child's services were being provided, related services were being provided by someone at your child's district school, special education center, or preschool special class program, or pre-K center, related services should still be provided during school hours. If you are working with an independent provider, it doesn't have to be specifically during school hours, but it should still be some time between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. Okay, now we can go on. So another very common recommendation for children or preschool students are SEIT services. SEIT is Special Education Itinerant Teacher. SEIT services are also being provided remotely. Again, to set this up, the SEIT provider should contact the family. To the extent possible, it should be the same SEIT provider that was already working with the child. For SEIT services, it really does have to be a device with audio and visual component. But again, if you don't have one now, you can request one from the DOE, or you can request an iPad from the DOE. There are still some available, so make that request as soon as possible. The services should be based on the IEP recommendation. So they really should be aligned with your child's existing recommendation. Okay, so for children who, for students with disabilities who attend a special class in an integrated setting or SCIS class or a special class, the DOE is recommending or requiring that your child's program, so their SCIS class or special class, create a remote learning plan. And you can see kind of the template of that plan here on the PowerPoint. It should be created by your child's program, so their SCIS class or special class, with your involvement. And basically what the plan does is it lays out what services will be provided for your child remotely. Again, to the extent possible, all the providers who are working with your child should continue to be the ones providing services, including the related service providers, but also the classroom teacher, the classroom paraprofessionals. They should all be the same people who are engaging with you and your family. This plan should have been developed by April 15th, and you should have received a copy of it, definitely an electronic copy, and copies should also be sent by mail. in developing the plan, programs should, again, contact you, the parent, see if you have access to a device. If not, again, please request a device from the DOE. Students in SCIS classes and special classes in any setting, including community-based organizations, are eligible to request an iPad from the DOE. Something else that the device points out is it asks if the child needs assistive technology and if they have access to assistive technology in the home. You know, particularly if your child is only receiving AT or had access to the device in preschool at the actual program, you can request that a device be made available for you in the home. There is kind of contact information for the provider filling this out with you in order to request the device. And programs, especially for families who speak a language other than English, and I know now I'm talking mostly to providers, programs have been given access to the DOE's phone interpretation services in order to contact families and assist with communications, particularly filling out forms like this and discussing services and what those services will look like. Okay. So we'll stop briefly now to see if there are questions that have come through the Q&A.
Yes, we have a couple.
Okay, so.
We have a question regarding the timeline for evaluation. So are evaluations still happening within 60 calendar days for both EI and preschool?
So for EI, there's a different timeline. For EI, from the date of the referral, the child should be evaluated and an IFSP meeting should be held within 45 days. For the DOE, within the 60 calendar days, that has not changed. The regulations have not been amended. We do know that obviously, and I should clarify, for preschool special education, it's 60 calendar days from when the parent signs consent and not from referral. Unfortunately, parents were not able to sign consent because they were not able to initiate evaluations for several weeks. But once evaluations have begun, it does start the clock for those 60 calendar days. Or if evaluations had actually started before the pandemic and not ended, really good position to try to get those evaluations expedited and contact AFC if you're running into challenges.
All right. What is the DOE doing about AT evaluations?
Yep, so the guidance that we have for evaluations is that remote evaluations should be taking place. Unfortunately, it is a case-by-case determination for some students. I do believe that to some extent, some AT evaluations, portions of that can take place remotely. Obviously, part of the AT evaluation is also having the child being able to experiment with different devices. So do not have clear understanding of how that's taking place right now, but we'll try to get answers and share them with the group after. I think there's some that are kind of specific to individual cases. As far as the June 30th extension for children who are in early intervention and made a referral for preschool special education, that June 30th extension should be automatic, should be happening across the board. So if a child's services were terminated since the pandemic started because evaluations had not been completed, please contact that child's EI service coordinator, contact the regional office, consumer affairs, contact advocates for children. Okay, sorry, there's a lot to look through. Okay, I think we can move on. Keep asking questions, but I think we answered kind of the the main ones that we were getting through the Q&A.
Yes. Can you answer a question about timing? Until what time can preschool special education services be provided during the day? Services should be provided during school hours.
Sorry. I had mentioned that in one of the slides. Some of these services, if a child, for related services, for example, if a child has an independent provider, those services can go outside of the typical school hour range. For preschool students, it can't go, the hours are from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Again, that's for private providers, not for providers who are providing services through a program. Okay, so transition to kindergarten. This is usually a big topic. I think there was a little bit less interest when we polled, but just as a recap, all children born in 2015 have a right to a public school kindergarten seat in September of 2020. For children with disabilities, finding that school, that program, and the services that that child will receive means that the child has two processes before they start kindergarten. One is the kindergarten admissions process, and one is the creation of the kindergarten IEP. That's also called the Turning 5 process. The kindergarten admissions process is the same for all students with and without IEPs, and it's a process of applying to DOE non-specialized schools. So also called zone schools, or sometimes referred to as like neighborhood schools. Just a quick review of where we are with the kindergarten application process. The deadline to apply to schools was on January 21st. The DOE sent offer letters at the end of April. The offers were available on the My Schools website. It was also sent, or should have been sent to families by mail. What the offer letter includes is the school that made your child a kindergarten offer. There should only be one school, but also includes the list of schools your child was placed on a wait list. So if you did not get into the school that you ranked first, then your child is automatically waitlisted to any school that you ranked higher than the school that made you a kindergarten offer. So those are the schools that should be listed. They're on the wait list. If you are logged on through My Schools, you can see where your child is on all of those wait lists. The offer letter also explains how to accept the offer. And that's key because you should accept the offer by June. And again, this is just to reserve your spot to attend that school come September. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but it does not remove your child from the wait list. Your child will remain on the wait list for any school that you ranked higher than the school that made you an offer. But do encourage that you save that seat. You will hear back from wait lists potentially throughout the summer and sometimes even at the beginning of the next school year. So to accept the kindergarten offer, there are a few different ways of doing this. One is online by logging onto myschools.nyc. Again, there not only can you accept the offer, but you can see where your child is on any schools that you have that you've been waitlisted to. You can also add your child to the wait list for different schools if you're not satisfied with the school that made you an offer. If you did not create a My Schools account, you can also get your child's offer and learn about wait lists by emailing the enrollment inbox, esenrollment@schools.nyc.gov. If you do not have access or just rather not send an email or go online, there's also a telephone number for enrollment. You should call 718-935-2009. Again, do all of these things, accept your offer by June to secure a seat for your child for September. It does not mean you should accept the offer even if you're still waiting to have your child's IEP meeting, even if you're waiting to hear back from Gifted and Talented, even if you're waiting to hear back from a specialized program. Those processes, those applications will continue. This just gives you the reserved seat like as your backup. Now, So what we discussed, the kindergarten admissions process or the application, that's for all students, including students with disabilities. The Turning 5 process is specific to students with disabilities. Not going to go in detail into, again, what this process is, because that would take us several hours, but particularly for preschool students, particularly for students who were identified as preschool students with a disability at the start of the school year, this process was well underway when schools closed in March. For those families, they were automatically assigned to an IEP team, a DOE IEP team, to conduct evaluations and to hold the IEP meeting and be in contact with the family. That should have been taken place in December and early January. Once assigned to an IEP team, that team was responsible for conducting evaluations and classroom observations. And your child's preschool providers were also responsible for providing progress reports and updates. And many of them did that by the deadline, which was in February. Unfortunately, this is kind of where that process was interrupted, right? Not all evaluations and classroom observations were done before schools closed. And certainly many IEP meetings had not taken place. So what that means is, like, in this process, we have seen the DOE start, again, providing these services remotely. So completing some evaluations remotely, not classroom observations, but social histories with parents remotely. Any particular evaluation that was needed for a related service can be done remotely. And also just really encouraging review of preschool special education records, particularly any more recent evaluations, in order to help make a determination at the IEP meeting. Those IEP meetings are still taking place. They're just taking place by phone or video now, again, either through a conference call or many are through Microsoft Teams. The fact that they're happening remotely does not change your right to notice before the IEP meeting. You should not receive a call from the DOE the day of saying we'd like to have an IEP meeting right now. The fact that you should still have 5 days notice. You may not receive that notice by mail. The fact that the meetings are happening remotely does not mean that you should, that your child's preschool should not participate. Your child's special education teacher or SEIT teacher should still be a part of the IEP meeting. And the IEP meeting, the IEP team should still be reviewing your child's preschool progress reports. Should be reviewing those even more thoroughly now, progress reports and other updates that were submitted. And once the IEP meetings are held, you will continue to get a school location letter, and the DOE should still provide those, especially for children who were identified by the start of the school year. You should receive that school location letter by June 15th. And I will just talk, the next slide, about what that letter will look like. So what the school location letter is, it's a summary, well, first printed on green paper to help you identify it. It summarizes your child's IEP recommendation. So in some ways it's the same as a prior written notice, which is a formal term that's given to the letter. It says what program was recommended for your child at the IEP meeting, what related services. Nothing that's on the school location letter in terms of the IEP recommendation should be a surprise to you. It should all be as was discussed at the IEP meeting. What the green school location letter does add is it says which school will be providing your child those services in September. Now, for families who their child's IEP recommends a non-specialized class, or excuse me, a non-specialized school. So for example, that could be a general education class with related services, or a special education teacher called a SETS provider for part of the day. It can be an integrated co-teaching class, or it can even be a 12 to 1-to-1 special class in a non-specialized school. If your child's IEP recommends any of those, the school listed on the green school location letter should be the school that made you an offer through the kindergarten application process, right? So those schools that we just discussed that made offers at the end of April. If, however, your child's IEP recommends, for example, a specialized school like a District 75 specialized program, this green letter will be the first time that you're notified of what that program is or what that school is. This green school location letter also includes the address of that school and contact information for that program. Unfortunately, this information is not, a lot of the information included is not currently accurate in terms of contact information. That contact information is for someone in the building, and schools are currently closed. But to kind of help resolve that, this year the DOE is adding an inbox to all the green school location letters and explaining in the letter that because of school closures, the information included may not be accurate. So it's really encouraging families to contact that first email address that I've listed here, t5placement@schools.nyc.gov, so that they can help put you in touch with someone at the school if you have any questions. You know, particularly for families who are not attending, or for the child who's not attending their zone school or not attending one of the schools that the family may have visited before applying to kindergarten, it can be really unnerving having your child start in September, having never visited the program or gotten any information about the program. Usually we encourage families, as soon as they get this letter, to call to visit. Because that may not be a possibility before September, at least you can call 311, you can email this inbox to request to speak to someone at the school and really ask any questions that you have about whether the program, the school will be able to appropriately serve your child. It includes being able to ask them to provide you with a copy of the class profile for your child's program, which is information about the other students, redacted information, but about the other students who will be there. And so, for example, if they have similar classifications as your child, if they have similar needs, so that you can determine if your child would be appropriately grouped with those other students. Just some other quickly contact information that you should have. This is not included in the green school location letter, but if your questions were really about the IEP itself or the program that was recommended, or if you haven't had an IEP meeting scheduled or there have been any kind of issues in completing evaluations, please email turning5@schools.nyc.gov, or you can call 718-935-2007. That's the DOE's special education hotline. If you're emailing the DOE, you can feel free to copy us, Advocates for Children, at our kindergarten inbox. Or if you have questions, you can call us at our helpline. Just one note about the green school location letter. If you applied to any of the specialized programs, if your child was accepted, you may receive another letter in the mail following this green school location letter with another placement offer, right? Which is the school that has, for example, the ASD NEST program that your child will be attending next year. Okay. This is just a quick reminder. It's not specific to the Turning 5 process, but that their parents have access to language services, including translation and interpretation from the Department of Education. Most things produced by the Department of Education or published, and especially on their website, are available in those top 9 languages, including English. Translation and interpretation means access not just to written documents, but also for meetings or anything spoken, right? So so at your child's IEP meeting, if you need an interpreter, please remember to request an interpreter before the meeting. The same is true for parent-teacher conferences. A lot of these things aren't taking place right now, but just so you know, especially going forward, you do have a right to these services. With respect to Turning 5 specifically, a lot of the mailings are also, or should be sent in your preferred language, including the welcome packet, the specialized program acceptance letter, the school location letter that we just discussed. Other documents are sent with a template, but should all be in your preferred language. Although we only listed these few languages up top, you have access, or parents have language access rights regardless of the language that they speak. So you should request an interpreter or translation, particularly if it's not one of these covered languages. All right, so we'll stop now for another brief Q&A. Just gotta scroll, looks like a few things came through. So we have a few questions about state-approved non-public schools. Those, we're not gonna cover much about those programs in this presentation because we're stopping at kindergarten, but for special programs, special class, community-based organizations, special class programs, or 4410 providers, they should be creating remote learning plans for students. So for their SCIDs, students with IEPs, and that for all students in the special classes. Is a question of whether there was a template available. The slide included a template. That is a template that the DOE shared with all of those programs. I'm not sure, I believe it should be available online as well. If a family has not heard from a T5 team yet, particularly, especially if that child was identified as a preschool student with a disability before March, I would strongly encourage that family to immediately contact the Turning 5 inbox that was listed just a couple of slides ago. They really should be well underway with the Turning 5 process. The first contact that the T5 team would have had with a family was sending, the family should have received a blue notice of referral sometime in January. That blue notice includes the contact information or title of the person who is leading the T5 process or holding the, leading the IEP meeting for that family. The contact on that letter is probably not accurate right now in terms of any phone or fax, for example, that was provided. So please email the Turning 5 inbox. Oh, and I apologize, it looks like I may have used the term SCIDs a few times without explaining it. It's a special class in an integrated setting. So it's a class for students with and without IEPs, for preschool students with and without IEPs. Okay. I'm going to pass it on now to Alana. We should be wrapping up in just a few minutes.
So we'd like to share a couple of resources with everyone. I know an important thing is meals. Currently, New York City is offering 3 meals per person every weekday, Monday through Friday, for New York City residents. There's no registration available. Families can pick up meals for their entire family at one time, and you can pick up all 3 meals at one time. There are options for vegetarian, halal, and kosher. If you need information about where you can find a meal hub, you can click the link here. You can also text the word meals or comida to 877-877, and they'll ask you for your address. And when you put in your address, they will provide you with a list of meal hubs in the area. All right. All right, check the AFC's website for COVID updates. We're going to be updating our website as we get information regarding updates relating to education in New York City. Okay. I know that we talked about a lot today, and there's a lot of unknowns. You may have questions about what's next. Further steps, here are some resources that you may want to check out. Help Now has some general resources. You can go to Thrive NYC if you need further emotional or mental supports. And you can also visit the comptroller's website for general resources by topic. There's a list of topics and you can click for more information. All right. Please visit our website. I know that Betty talked a lot, but there's a lot about different topics, sorry. But there's even more to it. So please go on our website if you would like more information about anything that she spoke about today. You can find AFC's Early Childhood Trilogy. This includes our guide to early intervention, our guide to preschool special education services, and also our Turning 5 guide. We also have some outlined, we have some pamphlets on early childhood education programs, and we have our kindergarten admissions guide. All right.
And I'll just say many of those guides, translations of those guides are available on our website as well.
The DOE also has resources. They have an early intervention to preschool guide, a preschool special education guide, this kindergarten orientation guide. I know there's a lot of educators in the room. Your program, they may have mailed this guide out to your programs, and families may also have received those. And here are the links to these. You can click this link here for special education contacts, and that'll give you a specific people to contact for certain questions. All right.
And, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Just on the slide before, just because there were some questions about resources for families, the link to early childhood remote learning and activities has, the DOE compiled a series of different resources and activities, parent-friendly, that they can do in order to engage with their child. These are challenging times, so it may be hard for many families to access, but especially as educators, if you would be able to review those and share suggestions with them, I think that's a pretty good resource. It is all focused on children under 5.
Okay. So we're going to be opening our chat, and we'd like for you to tell us something that you learned today. In addition, we're asking that you please complete our evaluation before you log off. Thank you so much for attending today. Our helpline is open, obviously remotely, and from Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So please give us a call or send us an email if you have any questions. We provided a lot of information, but we also have contact information if you have further questions. All right. Also, this guide is this outline is going to be available once we go offline, so you can get links to anything that was discussed today. Let's go in our chat to see if we have any questions.
Yep, just to echo what Alana said, thank you so much for participating. Please, the survey should be popping up for you to give us feedback. There it is. We really appreciate your participation. Time is valuable, but also any kind of guidance that you can give us. Was there something that we didn't answer? Things that you would like to be addressed in future trainings, but also like something that you learned today would be helpful for us to know. The chat is open. We can try to respond as some things come up. Just some resources to share for people who are still on that people had put up in as kind of Q&As. There are some agencies who are offering services during this time, or well, actually the New York Peace Institute. They are still conducting mediation services right now. And we heard from a preschool special program provider that thank you for the update, there has been revised guidance allowing these programs to support students and provide services beyond regular school hours, including on weekends with parent requests.
We have a question about the wait time for the device on average. That's a good question. I think now it shouldn't be as long. I think initially there was some delays because so many students were being serviced. I think now that a lot of students have their devices, you may experience a shorter time. But again, if you go to the technical support form, you can provide more information and track your device.
Yes, there was also there was a priority list for when students would receive devices. And so priority was initially given to students in temporary housing, to older students. That said, we saw a lot of variations with the families we work with. So like Alana said, go back to that, those resources that we provided with regards to technological support and devices to check where the status of your device.
The DOE recently released a link where, hi, I've been your moderator this whole time. There is a link that is available at the DOE's tech troubleshooting where families can specifically ask for the status of their device through that link. There is also an email that's at studentdevices@schools.nyc.gov. However, the DOE right now is preferring that families submit or fill out the online or electronic form as a way to check on the status of their devices.
And we link to that form in the presentation. So one of the links in those slides is to that resource. So Dorothy asked a question. I would just ask Dorothy to clarify what type of school program you're referring to. As in, is it a DOE district school? Is it a preschool special class program? Yep. Okay, we lost Dorothy.
I believe she said a DOE contract school, Betty.
Okay, so we clarified earlier, so a DOE contracted school, if you mean a 4410 program or a preschool community-based preschool special class program, the state education department revised their guidance, and I'll double check this, to allow for after hours and weekend services at the parent's request. If the program is saying otherwise, either please refer the family to contact our helpline, or you can also contact the DOE Special Education Hotline. And that telephone number was included earlier in the presentation. Oh, thanks, Dorothy. Yes. And again, this guidance is changing. So I just learned about the change, and that's why I said I'll have to double check. So it could be that they're not on top of it yet. In terms of priorities for a device, it wasn't really based on services. It was based on age, the child's housing situation, if the child was in foster care and temporary housing. Those were kind of the factors. If you requested these services, or if you requested the device and you haven't received it, as we said, really go back, click that link to the DOE form so that you can check the status. And for the children receiving speech and SEIT services that were told they didn't qualify, that may depend on, sorry, I realize I'm not explaining what the question was. There is someone who asked if, or said my children are not receiving, or my children are receiving speech and SEIT services, and they were told they didn't qualify for an iPad. Up until a few weeks ago, that was true if the child was not otherwise enrolled in a DOE program, right? So if the child was receiving SEIT and related services at a pre-K center, or at a DOE district school or community-based organization, that child would have been eligible for services. For children who were not enrolled in one of those programs and receiving, for example, SEIT and or related services in the home, there wasn't an option for those families to request a device. That has changed. That changed in the last couple of weeks. So you can now go back and fill out that service or that request form. Okay, I think we're gonna close up the chat. And again, thank you for coming. Hopefully you've completed the survey.